What's up, squad? This is Brandon from the Bantu Sun. Thank you so much for joining me today. I wanted to take this opportunity and revisit, excuse me, Southeast Asian security. As far as the state of affairs there, as this is going to be pretty much the front lines of a tripolar world. It comes, this region basically neighbors India, which is to its west northwest, and the China, which is to its northeast. And the reason why is because just read an article about Australia just dropping its first $500 million payment towards its multi-billion-dollar defense deal with the U.S. regarding their Virginia nuclear class submarines. Now, for those that don't know, nuclear, when it comes to naval power, nuclear is top echelon. So if you see something nuclear power, it means it's very modern, and these are vehicles or ships that can maintain extremely long durations out to sea. They're highly energy efficient and technologically advanced. They're very developed. These are the type of things you will only have if you're in that top echelon of the U.S. allies. So the fact that Australia was able to get these nuclear class submarines speaks to the very valued relationship and trust and allegiance that America has for Australia. Now, Australia near and dear to me for many reasons, and I always felt Australia understanding its culture, which is relatively easygoing, but I always call it, it's a duck culture, very cool, easygoing on the surface, but those feet are working underneath the surface of the water. And the reason why I say this is because Australia is a small nation, population-wise, landmass. They're freaking massive, one of the biggest countries in the world. But population-wise, they're about roughly the population of the state of Florida. So you have this massive continental-sized country outside of Brazil, and you have this relatively small population. So what this means is these people have a relatively high quality of life because they're technologically advanced, they have a small population, and they have a lot of resources to their discretion and availability. Now, conversely, they are basically a very highly developed banana economy, I guess. Well, you could say they do have that technology, but so much of what they rely on because of their population deficit, they can't really compete on a manufacturing level. So they really rely on these natural resources. When those natural resources boom, Australia boom. And they secretly provide the world with a lot of naughty things such as coal. But they also have wheat, any mineral you can possibly dream of. I think they're pretty much rich in almost anything you can think of from an industrial point of view, except oil. So this country being extremely large, extremely resource rich, it relies on this partnership. I remember, I think it was George Freeman, the geostrategist George Freeman, or his geopolitical group, the Stratford Group, which talked about Australia as kind of like this bodies, but its vital arteries are outside of its bodies. And those vital arteries they spoke of were actually the supply chain line. Australia has to be allied with a naval power because they need secure shipping lanes, because they need to import and export goods. So it makes sense that they were great, strong allies with Britain. But when Britain no longer could protect, and when the Japanese took Singapore in World War II, and Britain showed that it could not protect its East Asian and Southeast Asian nations, Australia quickly aligned to the United States, and they've been best buddies ever since. It gives America a great outpost in a faraway region of the world which America does not have access to directly. So, and Australia understand that because this part of the world, it is surrounded by everything that is not Western. You have large populations of people in Africa right above Australia, almost as if like hanging like the sword of Damocles is Indonesia, over 200 million Islamic Southeast Asians right above of their head. And then, of course, you have India and China and the rest of Asia not too far. It's a circle, as people always talk to, where it's more people live inside that circle than outside that circle in the world. And that circle is above Australia. So there's this massive population of people living in countries with quality of lifestyle far from the levels of Australia that would love to go to Australia. And the Australians, as I said, they seem very relatively easygoing, but they have some relatively draconian practices and ways of viewing the world. They're very finite in how they view their world. If you come to Australia, you better think like an Australian. They're not one for the diversity of thought over there. They would take people. You see what Trump trying to do with Guantanamo? Australia's been doing that with surrounding islands such as Nauru, where they basically stop the ships out at sea and they send people out to basically holding camps on smaller islands, not even letting them touch land in Australia. So I speak to this to say it doesn't surprise me. Australia is a fervent ally, as well as I think Trump is a person that's in office that fit their temperament, their style, how they view the world. They believe in close alliances. There have been some leaders in the past that wanted to embrace those Asian markets. But of course, when you embrace those Asian markets, you're going to have to also embrace that Asian influence within the country. And that's always been Australia's balance is how do we get those markets that are right on our doorsteps, get that exposure to the great growth in that region without sacrificing the principles and culture which you hold so dear to their heart. So it's to see that they're ramping this up, and I think the biggest question I have is this: is I really wonder what role China is playing on a global scale because I can't think of a great flip. I can't think of a great ally flip that China has had. And I don't know, maybe it is, maybe it's a new way of seeing the world. Growing up with the West in charge, the West is a very high molesting culture, right? The West doesn't sit within their borders. They want to come to your land, they want to tell you how to live, we'll give you funding, but you got to have certain human rights and you have to treat your minorities this way, all these things, they come with strings attached to the West, right? Whereas I wonder if China turtling and waiting to get a point where they can highly influence, but I look at a place like Singapore, and Singapore has been wealthy for a while, and Singapore has been relatively benign. And I think about this, and Singapore has a large Chinese or former Chinese population, and I wonder if that's going to be the East Asian way. Of course, Japan has been a great lieutenant of America since World War II, and they haven't been too judgmental. But I wonder if this is just a totally different way of thought. Do China think they can get a far reach in this world without soft power, without the ability to influence? Because it seems the only way they want to influence is through strength, not through alliances, not through building relationships. And I always say is America's greatest strength. Of course, it's opportunism, which it does not fail to achieve, but it's also the ability to keep the door wide open for many different groups and cultures. And I think could some of that inability when you're dealing with East Asia and some of these most homogenous population, and China having this large Han population, relatively homogenous country, does that prevent them from really building great relationships with countries abroad? Because Australia's in China's backyard, and it really allows America to project overseas. You see what America's doing with China and Panama. The ability to project, that's the great power game. It's like, how can I project my power in far places where we can touch anybody? So you see what's going on with the Trogros Island in the South Indian Ocean or the Indian Ocean. So to see Australia closing up to the U.S., not seeing very strong outreach by China to any of the countries in the region, China still seems to be rocking with the same countries it's always rocked with, to much of, I think, neglect, because these countries aren't developing to the degree that China is doing so. So it's really making me question, does China know something I don't know, or is this going to be a new model based on non-interventionism that China is bringing forth, this East Asia model of leadership, which can borderline look at, from the outside looking in, as apathy, So comparing and contrast, it's going to be interesting to see how these relationships evolve between Australia, U.S., and China in this region, because Australia's caught between. but they're heavily leaning culturally towards America, but economically, it's obvious that they lean towards East Asia or Southeast Asia. Now, excuse me, the security deal is going to be part of AUKUS, and that's the Australian, United Kingdom, U.S. Um, security pact they have going on down there. So it speaks to the ability. As I said before, great powers know how to project power and influence. So seeing America being able to make these security deals, keep steadfast allies, and they develop in line, they're happy, their allies happy. You see how Trump's treating people, but do you see people exiting? Because there's no ulterior or alternative options out there for global leadership. America has held monopoly on it. So it's going to be interesting to continue to see how this relationship evolves. That's what I think. And it's going to be very interesting to see how Australia balances Western culture in part of the world that's very non-Western. So, and then China responds to that as well. So those are my thoughts. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you have any insights or comments, please drop below in the comment section. Like, share, subscribe if you enjoy the content. Until next time, take care. Back to up.